Genetically modified organisms are living organisms whose genetic material has been artificially manipulated in a laboratory through genetic engineering. This process is used in farming in order to develop different traits of certain foods, like a resistance to browning in apples or tolerance to droughts. With our population growing so immensely, it's important for farming industries to be able to keep up with the high demand of food, which means that there's no margin for crops to die due to droughts, pests, or any other harsh growing conditions. That's where GMOs come in. Scientists have developed a genetic process called CRISPR-Cas9, in which it is known for allowing scientists to zero in on a single gene and turn it on or off, remove it, or exchange for a different gene. Many people disagree with this concept for a few reasons, one of which is because of the way that plants breed and reproduce. Through the process of gene flow, genetically modified seeds could potentially mix with the natural crop, which could eventually lead to the spreading of unwanted characteristics to other crops.
Another note, the use of GMOs has the potential of diminishing the biodiversity of certain crops, which, in turn, may lead to the loss of entire crops. GMOs have also been said to have characteristics that could likely affect individuals who are taking antibiotic medicine, and also have the potential to cause serious allergic reactions. Regardless of the copious amounts of oppositions, the use of genetically modified organisms should be strategically manipulated to solve world hunger and combat the negative effect of global warming while also creating a sustainable living environment for both people and animals.
Now, why could this be so bad? Earlier we mentioned that people don't like the idea of GMOs because of gene flow, which can also be referred to as gene escape. This name comes from the beliefs that genes that are held by genetically modified foods escape their respected crops and end up altering the desired characteristics of other crops. Due to the way plants breed, it is possible for a genetically modified organism to accidentally mix with the natural crop and contribute its unwanted characteristics to that crop. To give you a better idea, plants release their pollen into the air and are transported by birds or insects onto other plants, making it easy for organic crops to receive mixed GMO genes. This means that people who want food produced by a pure, organic crop may not be able to receive that because of the potential threat of gene flow. Supporters of this may use the argument provided by the Biotechnology and Food Research Center that pollen from a single GM tree has been shown to travel 1/5 of the length of the United States. With this in mind, the solution to this potential problem may seem hard to come by. However, the uneasy feelings that come with the use of GMOs don't stop here. Let's now consider the effects that using GMOs has on the biodiversity of crops. Having a reduced biodiversity in crops is another dangerous concept that constructs a good argument about the use of GMOs. As stated by environment.gov, biodiversity refers to the variety of all life forms on Earth, the different plants, animals, and microorganisms, and the ecosystems of which they are a part. In the case of genetically modified crops, biodiversity refers to the removal of the vast varieties of certain foods and the effects that this may have on farmers and their crops overall. For example, if one disease, such as a potato blight, was strong enough to wipe out a single variety of a crop, then that disease is even more likely to wipe out all of that crop. For example, a blood orange is a variety of oranges, where oranges are the entire crop. Imagine you are an individual who has never had contact with another person. If you were to go to another country for the first time, you're likely to get significantly ill because you've never had exposure to diseases that you may be faced with in said country. Similarly, that is the problem with biodiversity. Once plants all have the same genetics, if one disease kills one crop, it will kill all of the crops.
When looking at these problems, we should also look at ways to solve them in mutually beneficial ways. In regards to biodiversity, GMOs can be viewed as a positive. The use of GMOs makes crops stronger and more plentiful, thereby removing much of the need for expansion needed when crops die. Removing the need for regular and unnecessary expansion, we allow for other natural areas to remain, encouraging a natural process of biodiversity. There are better, more effective ways to utilize GMOs in which they will not affect non-GMO farms. Some examples of avoiding cross-pollination include creating buffer zones around organic crops and plant timing so the crops will not be pollinating at the same time. Farmer Jenny Schmidt from Maryland produces both non-GMO soy and GMO soy, stating that her GMO crops have a higher yield than the non-GMO crops, but the real benefit comes from the saving in time, labor, fuel, and wear and tear on her machinery. All of those things combined are very meaningful to a family farm, she notes. Schmidt is not alone in this belief, which is why crops like soy are 93% genetically modified.
Are there health risks? Some people are worried about the studies conducted on GMOs and how healthy they can be for humans when pesticides are often bred into the plant. Pesticides are often used in crops in order to control disease organisms in mass production. Not only is it efficient, but it's a great way to conserve food supply and lower food costs. It's also said that they help to combat hunger and other related problems in various parts of the world. The most common use of a genetically engineered crop is to increase yield, which is how much they can harvest in one crop. Although this does increase food production, there could be some health risks for people consuming these foods. For example, the Institute for Responsible Technology reported that rats fed a diet containing a GMO potato had virtually every organ system adversely affected after just 10 days of feeding. Another concern is allergies. The FAO/WHO does require a strict policy for the approval of GMO foods. The structure of the introduced protein should be compared to all known allergens.
So how could someone miss this? Researchers haven't found any evidence of allergens in GMO crops, so what are people concerned about? This relates back to gene escape, as the concern has to do with allergens that are caused from the contamination of unauthorized crops. There are regulations for farmers in segregating these crops, however, it must be considered that these guidelines won't always be followed. The European Union Scientific Committee on Plants states that contamination is unavoidable, and therefore, the consequences of contamination should be considered before market approval. There are currently 30 U.S. approved GMO foods on the market and have had no reports of any health concerns or allergic reactions.
The research that has been done on animals is, however, limited because of the different ways that humans and organisms react. For example, some individuals worry about how these pesticide plants could affect insects or other animals who try to eat them or live on the contaminated plants. The use of internal poisons and pesticides sounds dangerous and toxic. However, it's important to know that humans and insects have different tolerance for different substances. A small amount of pesticide might kill an aphid, but a human can withstand hundreds of times a greater amount of pesticides until it's actually harmful.
In farming, the use of genetically modified organisms is important for increasing the worldwide supply of food and creating a faster method of agriculture to sustain the fastly growing population. As said by the Biotechnology and Food Research Center, world population is increasing day by day, which is a threat to food security. As we stated previously, the successful manipulation of GMOs stands as a remedy to the increasing threat of world hunger. By increasing the production while also cutting the production times, farmers are able to produce the greatest yield for the lowest price. GMOs help not only farmers but the world as a whole and can be a great improvement to the quality of life in impoverished countries. GMOs save time and money for all parties involved. Food sustainability is also highly connected to GMOs by letting the crops successfully fight against harmful pests and diseases. While it is important to utilize organic crops, the use of GMOs is a liable solution to avoiding the threat of world hunger.